All right, Shabbat Shalom. Nice to see everybody. Thank you for joining. Very nice to see your faces. Hope it's been a restful Shabbat for everybody. We're going to go ahead and jump in. We'll start with Ashrei, which is on 214 in Lev Shalem, 226 if you're in Sim Shalom for Shabbat and festivals, and then 558 in Slim Shalom. Ashrei Yoshvei Beitecha Od Yalalucha Selah Ashrei Am Shekach Alo Ashrei Am Shadonai Elohav Tila LeDavid. Tila Adonai Yadaber Pi Varech Kol Basar Shem Kodsho Leolam Va'ed V'anachnu Nevarech Yah Me'ata Ve'ad Olam Hallelujah. Uvalet Zion on 217 if you're in Sim Shalom for Shabbat and festivals. Uvalet Zion Goel Ushavei Fesha V'Yakov Ne'um Adonai. V'yata kadosh yoshev tilot Yisrael v'karazel zeh v'he'ad mahar kadosh 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 Adonai tzavot melech la'aretz kevodo. V'tisaeni ruach v'shma acharei kol ra'ash gadol baruch kavod Adonai mimkomo. Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. Adonai Elohei Avraham Yitzchak Yisrael ve'avoteinu. Ki ata Adonai tov v'salach v'rab chesed l'chol porecha tzidkatcha tzedek le'olam v'tortcha emet. Adonai Yoshia melchinu v'yohom korenu Baruch hu Eloheinu shebaranu lichvodo. Laman lo niga larik v'lo neled lebehalaha yiratzon milfanecha Adonai Eloheinu v'le'avoteinu. Yiftechu v'cha yodei shemecha kol lo azavta dorshecha Adonai ki lo azavta dorshecha Adonai Adonai chavetz l'man tzidko yagdil Torah ve'yadir. We skip Chatzi Kaddish and we transition now to the afternoon Amidah. This is on to the Torah service first. This will go straight into the reading. This is from Naso, Parshat Naso, and it can be found on. Well, I'll give you the verse. We're in Bamidbar Numbers. This is chapter 4, starting on verse 21, and we'll go through to 33. I'll read with the aliyot stops in between. When we get this coming week at Naso, we start with the Levites and their role and census in the Mishkan. So we start with verse 421. And I'll start with the blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kichanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Vayidaber Adonai el Moshe lemor naso et rosh b'nei Gershon gam hem leved avotam lemishpachotam mi ben shloshim shana v'mala ad ben chamishim shana tivkodotam kol haba litzvot avaha la'avod avodah be'ohel moed zod avodat mishpachot hagirshuni la'avod Umasa. We are on verse 425. Venasu et Yiriyot hamishkan vet ohel moed michsehu umichseh hatachash asher alav milmala ve'et masach petach ohel moed ve'et kal hechatzer ve'et masach petach sha'ar hechatzer asher al hamishkan ve'al hamizbeach saviv ve'et metrehem ve'et kol kolei avodatam ve'et kol asher yaseh lahem v'avadu al pi aharonu v'nahav tihiyeh kol avodat b'nei hagirshuni lechol masam ulechol avodatam ufkadetem alehem b'mishmeret et kol masam zod avodat mishpechot b'nei hagirshuni ba'ohel moed umishmartam b'yadi tamar ben Aharon hakohen. Our final aliyah, verse 29, 429. B'nei Merari lemishpachot tam leved avotam tifkodotam mi ben shloshim shana v'mala ve'ad b'nei chamishim shana tifkedetem kol haba letzavah la'avod et avodat ohel moed וזאת משמרת מסעם לכל עבודתם באוהל מועד, קרשי המשכן ובריחיו ועמודיו ואדניו ועמודי החצר סביב אדניהם ויתדותם ומתריהם לכל כליהם ולכל עבודתם ובשמות תפקדו את כלי משמרת מסעם. זאת עבודת משפחות בני מררי לכל עבודתם באוהל מועד ביד איתמר בן אהרון HaKohen. We continue now with the afternoon Amidah, which can be found on, if you're in Lev Shalem, 223, otherwise 234 in Sim Shalom, and 574 in Slim Shalom. I'll offer some time now for private and quiet Amidah as we begin together. Ose shalom bimroma huya se shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen. Ose shalom bimroma huya se shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen. I invite you to continue at your own pace. Otherwise, we'll pick back up together at the Aleinu, which is on page 231 in Lev Shalem, 248 in Sim Shalom, and 598 in Sim Shalom. Aleinu shabeach ladon hakol. Kakatuba Tortech Adonai Imlach Leolam Va'ed Ve'nemar Ve'haya Adonai Lemelech Al Kol Haaretz Bayom Hahu Yeh Adonai Echad Ushemo Echad. We turn to Kadisha Tom, page 249 in Sim Shalom for Shabbat and festivals. Otherwise, it is 232 Lev Shalom, and then 600. I invite those who are mourning to please rise, and we could also have in our hearts today all that we've lost in the conflict right now. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah. Ve'alma divra kirte ve'amlich malchute. V'chayechon uvyomechon uchaye dechol Beit Yisrael. Ba'gala ubisman karif v'imru. Amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'lam ulalmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yithaleh v'yithalal. Shmei Kudasha Brichu. Le'ela min kol berachata v'shirata, tush bechata v'nechamata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, l'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. We'll transition now to the learning portion. I realize I didn't want to take the Mourner's Kaddish away from somebody who's observing a yahrzeit today and has this one last chance before the end of Shabbat to say it. Is there somebody who wanted to lead that I could still give the opportunity to, although I've just said it? Okay. In that case, let's transition now to our learning. I hope you had the chance to print out the form before Shabbat. Otherwise, let me pull it up now. So we have another copy here. It'll just be 1 minute.
May I ask, did it come out under Rabbi Schatz's name?
You know, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how they posted it this week.
It's in the Shabbat bulletin. The Shabbat bulletin email that they sent out.
Yeah, never mind.
Well, either way, hopefully this should work. So you'll have it here. Okay, can everybody see it? Great. So I just want to open with a starting question. Let me go to the beginning here. It's a question I've struggled with for a while, which is the Torah perfect? Whatever that means to you. Is it a perfect text? And I grew up at Valley Beth Shalom, and I was walking with Rabbi Feinstein, and he gave me an answer that always stuck with me, which is, whether or not the Torah is perfect, that certainly is a question that warrants more discussion. But he said, I don't know if Torah is perfect, but what I do know is that the human process of trying to unfold and understand Torah, that is perfect. And I thought that was a very interesting answer. So I just want to open it up for your responses, if you don't mind. Could you tell me, where are you at with that question? I'd love to hear from some volunteers. Yeah, please, Joanna.
To me, what that statement says is, if it's the human understanding that is perfect, then there is more than one human understanding. And I think that applies, multiple people at the same time, and also to any one individual over time. Like, I know my own perception and understandings of different passages of Torah. is refracted through the life that I've led, the experiences that I've had, and it changes sometimes over time. There are pieces of it that evolve. So to me, the lesson in that is, kind of like we tend to see truth as very black and white, like there is the truth and it's right or it's wrong. And that's not the case. And a little bit also in terms of like how we relate to Jews around the world is you don't have to be wrong for me to be right. And I guess really the Jewish concept, it just occurred to me of what I'm getting at is that saying that we have, Shivim Panim LaTorah, that, 70 being just sort of a round number, often representing infinity, like there are infinite faces, infinite possibilities of Torah.
Great, thank you. I think there's so much there, right? This idea of objective truth versus relative truth, or human capacity to even comprehend truth in the first place, and especially when you consider all of our different perspectives. And just the word you use also, evolution, that evolves in time, throughout time and space. Great. Anyone else? Yes, please, Taiwo.
When you use the word perfect in a Jewish context, I don't think of it as its an English meaning. I think of it as the rationale given for bris milah.
Say more.
Because I don't know, I think it was Rambam that, I could be wrong, remembering wrong.
Okay.
But I think it was Rambam that explained bris milah in two ways. One was helping to control the sexual urge, which is a powerful one. But I thought the other one is because human beings in that sign of the covenant need a way to participate. So that has to do with, because I think there was some question, if circumcision were necessary, why didn't God create the male human body without a foreskin, et cetera, et cetera. So some rabbi said, because in continuing the covenant in a generation, there needs to be a human act that's part of it, which of course
great.
gets into the whole human bodies that don't have foreskins, but
of course,
regardless.
No, but I think that's a really good point to bring into this discussion, because in a sense, that's where I'm going with this, which is, what is the human hand in bringing about that perfection, right? Is the Torah given perfect, or is it asking for this human act to complete or to have a hand in Torah? So that's, I think that's really interesting. Let's go ahead and jump into the text here. The first one I brought is from Exodus, from Shemot 32:19. Can I have a volunteer to read it? Let's just do English for now. Feel free to just unmute yourself. Any takers?
It's Gary. I'll do it.
Great, Gary, thank you.
As soon as Moses came near the camp, he saw the calf and the dancing. He became enraged, and he hurled the tablets from his hands and shattered them on the foot of the mount.
Great. So brief context here, right? Moses has ascended to the mountain, has received the first set of tablets from God, comes back, and much to his dismay, we're partying and worshiping a golden calf. Moses, in his rage, hurls the tablets down, shatters the first set. Gary, can you continue on with the commentary from Or HaChaim, the second text
Sure.
there?
It was when he came close to the camp, etc. As a result of their idolatry, it became mortal once more, and a set of laws designed for immortal people was no longer appropriate for them. This is why those tablets had to be smashed. All of this is based on the opinions that Moses had not acted on his own accord when he smashed the tablets.
Okay, so there's a few things going on here, but I'd love some reactions and responses to what's being said. I'll just say from my point of view, the few things that jump out at me is, first is, as a result of their idolatry, they became mortal once more. So that implies that for a brief moment, they were perfect or immortal. And then that comes crashing down literally and figuratively with the tablets. But a second thing I'm getting here, and this is what I want to focus on, that a set of laws designed for immortal people was no longer appropriate for them. What are some thoughts and reactions to that, or anything else in the commentary? But feel free to comment on that. Margulies, did you have something?
I was just going to say that was the first time I ever heard or even considered that the laws might have been, the tablets might have been different than what they were when he came down, when Moses came down again with them.
But I have a question going, but if the tablets, we read the tablets, we read what the first one said and we read what the second one said. Correct me if I'm wrong, don't we? Because God wrote the stuff on Mount Sinai. We hear what he wrote. And then we after they smashes, he does it again. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Right. So no, this is good. We're actually going to get into it because the texts that follow get into that dichotomy. By the way, I think I added a G there. It's Marlies, right? Did I say Margulies?
It's Marlies, yeah.
Marlies, yes. A G crept in there. I don't know why. But right. So we're actually going to get into that. What is there a difference between the first set and the second set? If there is, right? Because doesn't God say, okay, come back and I'll give you a second set like what was on the first? So we would think it's the same law. But let's go ahead and move straight into it.
May I say just one thing?
Please, yeah.
If there was a difference on the first set, the Baal Tashit, the do not waste would have needed to be there, because if you have mortals that are still procreating, it becomes even more important because you're going to run out of resource faster. Because if no one's dying, then recycling becomes even more important.
Oh, absolutely. That's really interesting, right? To go in and analyze each law and see how it would have played with an immortal people. I think that's a fascinating point.
Josh, this is Brand. Good to see you. But I'm struck by the fact that this commentary absolves Moses of any anger. Yeah. See, and it's just it strikes me as odd that it's referred to as immortal people. I mean, clearly, one of the bases of Torah is to orient us away from our most base instincts into something of a more refined human existence. But this whole thing kind of basically says that Moses kind of had to do what he did, and he's not acting on his own accord.
Right. And
this seems to absolve Moses of any mortal feeling, which is interesting to me.
And it also ties into the discussion because I kind of brushed past that. So I'm glad you elevated it. When we're talking about perfection and whether or not that exists and what that looks like, here are the rabbis absolving Moses of any imperfection, right? He didn't lose his temper, which we know, according to Moses' character, he's done before when he smites the Egyptian. But the rabbis, of course, come to his defense. And whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing, we can discuss. But I think that's a very interesting point. And if what I'm hearing in the way that you bring it up, I think there's something troubling about that because it glosses over our imperfections. And that's not what Judaism is about. It's a very real religion that deals with life in real life.
So, in Beit today, as part of the sermon, Rabbi Schatz explained that converts to Judaism, one of the things that they found fascinating is that our various texts present alternative views.
Correct.
In other words, it's not a one way of viewing something. So the extent to which the Torah is perfect, it clearly has opposing views, minority views, majority views. We know this from even like the Rabbinic Council. This use majority and minority opinions, right? And she said that people that are new to Judaism are fascinated by the presentation of all different views on an issue. And so, perfection in the sense that if there's one view of the Torah, we're never going to reach it because we always have these different views, or maybe the perfection is the different views.
Beautiful. Right? That's the Elu ve'elu. These and these are the words of the living God, right? It doesn't have to be one or the other, and we preserve the minority opinion, which in a way is getting us even closer to truth than one answer would be. And I think that's a very important contribution of the Jewish faith. Okay, let's move forward. I'll go ahead and read. This is from Shemot from Exodus 34:1. The Lord said to Moses, carve 2 tablets of stone like the first, and I will inscribe upon the tablets the words that were written on the first ones, which you shattered. Right? So it seems like this would be the same, except the next commentary is going to pick up on something that you might have missed. I sure did the first time I read it, which is God saying to Moses, carve 2 tablets. Here's a Barbanel. The first set were both carved and inscribed by God, while the second set were carved by Moses, who did not inscribe them, and inscribed by God, who did not carve them. So what a Barbanel is picking up on is that the first tablets were both carved and inscribed by God. It was a completely divine product. The second one, however, was carved by Moses and written on by God. So there seems to be a partnership. In this one, a human hand in this one. So I'm gonna read the last of Barbanel, and then I'll open it up for thoughts. Why did the second set of tablets have greater holiness than the first set, as indicated by the verse, and no man shall ascend the mountain with you? What he's saying here is that when it came time to carve the second tablets, God seems to put in place some extra laws that imply a greater holiness for the second one. Right? Because in the second Torah it says, let no man ascend the mountain with you. But for the first tablets, the verse said, ascend to God, you and Aharon and Nadav and Abihu, right? So for the first set, you could have these other people come up, important people nonetheless, but you could have them come with you, Moses, up to the mountain. But this time, no, nobody comes around. So Abarbanel is saying there's greater holiness in the second one because of these extra limitations. Also here, the verse warned, the sheep and the cattle shall not graze adjacent to the mountain, while no such restriction appears with respect to the first tablets. It appears the second tablets that Moses carved were holier than the first set carved by God. I think this is a radical thing to say, because what kind of logic gets you to something that God created and wrote is less holy than something that people had a role in? So some responses, reactions to this.
Not specifically to this, but to the overall theme that we're exploring, it occurs to me that I don't think there actually is a word for perfection in Hebrew. I think that the word for perfection in Hebrew that people would use is shleimut. But shleimut doesn't really mean perfection. It means a sense, it's kind of a hard word to translate back into English, but it means a sense, if I have it right, of completeness, of wholeness, of being at peace. Mm-hmm. And so, I think if we refer to the Torah as perfection, then as someone said before, it almost becomes something that is completely like unattainable. Is perfection ever attainable? But to strive to be, let's say like at peace with oneself and at peace with others, is I think a different lens on what we're striving for than to say, are we striving for perfection?
Right. So is perfection the ultimate goal, or is it peacefulness, shleimut?
It seems to me that these commentators are recognizing that the top-down system of God writing the Torah and providing it to the people is not going to work. Mm-hmm. That what the fact that Moses carves it, but it's inscribed by God, shows you that the only way we're going to survive is in partnership with God. Mm-hmm. We do, he does, or she does, God does, we do. We work together to accomplish this task of developing these tablets. But just like anything else, we have to work in partnership with God, and we can't just rely on God to do it for us. And I think that's what this is hinting at, and that's really true, right? I mean, the reality is we're in partnership with God. We're created in the image of God, but we have to take our role, and God has to take its role. And together we can accomplish something that's better than ourselves, but we can't do it if it's just top down, and we can't do it by ourselves.
I think that's really profound, right? And I think it's something that is a real charge for us as human beings, that we're not just, our role in life isn't necessarily just to passively obey, but rather to actively, I guess to use Joanna's language, like achieve shleimut, to actively fulfill actively strive to better understand the Torah in an evolving sense, because we have a role in achieving God's will. And how much more exciting is that than to be more passive agents? Instead, we have that ability to act and shape. Tybal, yes.
It's hard to follow that comment, but mine's a different kind of comment. I just wanted to say that when coming on, I hadn't seen the source sheet yet. Mm-hmm. So the fact that I picked a cameo, which is inscribed for a Shavuos topic, it's Ruth, is just synergy in the world.
Thank you for saying that. That's great. I love when things work out that way. This final text we're not going to have time for, and I knew that going into it. But I selfishly wanted to put it in because I love it so much, and maybe it's really a text study of its own. So I'll have to, or like when we have more time, maybe. But I want to summarize it for you. This is from modern day feminist midrash literature. This is Rivka Luvitz. It's called The Midrash of a Refused Woman. And what it does here, first, in order to understand or really appreciate this story, you have to appreciate the Tanur of Achnai story, the oven of Achnai, which you might already be familiar with. But in brief summary, there are two rabbis that are basically in a midrash, and they're Beit Midrash, and they're arguing, is this oven tahor or tameh? Is it pure or impure? One says it's pure, the other says it's impure, and they debate it. And one says, I know that it is pure. And to prove it, let this X miracle happen, and it happens. And the rabbi who says it's impure maintains it's impure. The miracle doesn't persuade me. And then he says, but I know that it is pure, and if I'm right, let this other miracle happen, and it happens, and so on and so forth. But it's still, the argument persists. He says it still maintains that it's not pure, until Bat Kol, a voice of God, enters the room and says that the halacha is according to the one who says that it is pure. And the rabbi who is arguing that it's impure points a finger to God and says, Lo b'shamayim hi, quoting Torah, saying that the Torah is not in heaven, you've given it to us. So basically, we don't derive our answers from the Bat Kol. So and God laughs, smiles, and says, my children have defeated me. My children have defeated me. What this midrash does is it takes that same exact structure, but instead of two rabbis arguing about whether an oven is tahor or tameh, it's a woman who's seeking a get, and the rabbi refuses and says, I'm sorry, I can't give you a get. This is a case of a woman who the husband has divorced her, but won't give her a bill of divorce, so a get, so she is stuck, an aguna, an anchored woman. She can't remarry without breaking Torah. So she's stuck, and she wants to be liberated from that, and the rabbi says, I can't do it. And she says, if I know I deserve a get, and to prove it, let this miracle happen, and it happens, and so on and so forth. And the rabbi keeps maintaining no, to the point where the Bat Kol, God comes down and says, she's right, give her the get. And the rabbi says, Lo b'shamayim hi, and God, instead of laughing, cries and says, my children have defeated me, my children have defeated me. And it's such a powerful story, and it really gets me emotionally every time I read it. And the reason I wanted to share it is that I think that we've received these two tablets, right? The first set and the second set. And the first set may have been this perfect set for immortal people. And the second one has our human hand in it. And it requires this partnership between us and God. And I think that through the way that we seek to uncover that, what is right and wrong in the world, we can get closer to that first, more perfect set. This aguna problem is a problem that exists in the Torah. And you might ask, how could something like that exist in a perfect Torah? And so you could say, well, it's imperfect. Or you could say, well, it's a partnership. And we have a role in peering back through to try to return to this first, more perfect Torah. And we do that by continuing to wrestle with and struggle with our text, and and try to achieve that first celestial Torah. Any thoughts and reactions to that? And then we'll move on.
I just want to say it's beautiful. That's why the Torah is a living document, because we can't predict where it's going to go, you know, and this is a brilliant piece on how the Torah evolves to deal with situations that could not have been contemplated.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the beautiful things about Judaism. It's one of the beautiful things about conservative Judaism, that we all take baby steps. You know, we're never back into the dark ages, but we step a little bit faster than orthodoxy, and that's probably part of its perfection as well. And this dialogue that takes place is wonderful to read, because it shows we don't live in the past. And this is an ongoing, and you and I sitting here today, even though you're a lot younger to me and I'm close to your dad's age, we can't predict where this is going to go 100 years from now. And it'll be different than what we're looking at today. And that's the beauty of it.
Absolutely. And I think it's interesting to point to our denomination, and, you know, if we can pat ourselves on the back for a moment, and that's not to the expense of the other movements, but we've basically made this Agunah situation eradicated because of, you know, Kiddushin al Tanai or the Lieberman clause, these different ways of, and it's not a purely conservative movement thing, you know, other movements make use of them as well. But in doing that, are we contradicting Torah, or are we actually fulfilling our role as God's partner in bringing about that original set that you know can still exist if we can get there? So I think that's a good charge into this week and Shavuot and beyond. So thank you all for learning with me today, and we'll go ahead and as always, let the discussion continue afterwards. We'll stick to time here, but I'm always interested in continued thoughts and conversations anytime. We'll move on to Mariv now. This is 264 in Lev Shalem, 281 in Shabbat and festivals, and 200 in weekday Shabbat and festivals. Rachum Yechaber Bona Lo Yashki Behir Bala Shiva Kovalo Yair Koch Amato Adonai Hoshia Melch Yanenu V'Yahom Korenu Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam. El Chai V'Kayam Tamid Melech Aleinu Le'olam Va'en Baruch Atah Adonai Amari Varavim Avad Olam Beit Yisrael Fatah. V'avtachah tosim mimenu le'olamim Baruch Atah Adonai Ohev Amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Adonai Elohechem emet. Umalchuto Bertin Kiblu Alehem, Moshe Ibn Israel, Chanu Shira, B'simcha Rabba, V'amru Chulam, Mi chamocha b'ayim Adonai, Mi kamoka neder Kodesh, Norat Hilot, O Seifele, Malchutecha Ra'uvanecha, Bokeyam Mifnei Moshe, Ze Eli Anu V'amru, Adonai Yimloch Le'olam Va'ed. ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל. Hashkivenu is 267 in Lev Shalem, otherwise 284 or 206. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom. Ushmor tzeitenu uvainu lechaim u'leshalom me'ata ve'ad olam. Baruch ata Adonai shomer amo Yisrael la'ad. Baruch Adonai le'olam amen ve'amen. כי המלכות שלך היא ולמעט תמלוך בכבוד, כי אין לנו מלך אלא אתה. ברוך אתה אדוני המלך בכבודו תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד ועל כל מעשיו. We turn now to the Amidah, page 270, otherwise 286 or 210. Ose shalom bimroma fuya se shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen. Ose shalom bimroma fuya se shalom aleinu ve'al kol Israel ve'imeru. Amen. We continue with Aleinu, which is on 281 in Lev Shalem, 297 in Sim Shalom, and 696 in Sim Shalom for weekday Shabbat festivals. Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol latet gedula leotzer breshit shelo asanu k'goyei haratzot velo samanu k'mishpachot adama shelo sam chelkenu kahem וגורלנו ככל המודם ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד הארץ ומשה ביקרו בשמיים ממעל ושכינתו זו בגובה מרומים הוא אלוהינו אינו אמת מלכנו את פסולתו ככתוב בתורתו וידעת היום והשבות אל לבבך כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל ועל הארץ מתחת אין עוד. ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד. Kaddish Yatom, Mourner's Kaddish, is 282 in Lev Shalem, 298 or 698. Is there anybody who can lead us in Mourner's Kaddish?
I could do it.
Thank you.
Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah.
Amen.
Ve'alma divra kirtei ve'amlik malchutei b'chayachon uv'yomechon uv'chayedachol beit Yisrael ba'agala uv'isman kariv v'yamru amen.
Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba Mevorach Le'olam U'Almei Almaya.
Yehi shmei rabba mevarach le'olam u'almei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yittalei v'yittalal shemei l'kudisha brichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechamata, da'amiran be'alma v'yamru amen.
Amen.
Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yamru amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yamru amen.
Amen. Thank you, Marlise. We'll transition now to Havdalah. So I invite you to grab your accoutrements as we bring in the rest of the week together. Yanai na na hey nai 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 yanai na na yai na nai yanai na na hey nai 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 hey nai 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 hey nai nai ya da da hey da da hey nai ya da da hey da da hey nai ya da da hey da da hey nai ya da nai 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 הנה אל ישועתי, יתך ולא אפחד, כי עוזי וזמרת יה אדוני ויהי לי לישועה, וספת מים בששון ממעייני הישועה, לאדוני הישועה, על עמך ברכתך סלה, Adonai Tzevaot Imanu Miskav lanu Elohei Yaakov Selah Adonai Tzevaot Ashrei Adam Boteach Bach Adonai Hoshia Hamelech Yaneinu V'yom Koreinu La Yehudim Hai Torah Besimcha Vesason Vikar Tenti Yelanu Kos Yeshuot Esa U'Hashem Adonai Ekra Yadadai Yadadai Savri Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei minei v'samim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei meorei ha'esh. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamavdil ben kodesh lechol ben or lechoshech ben Yisrael le'amim ben yom hashvi'i l'sheshet yemei hamaseh Baruch atah Adonai hamavdil ben kodesh lechol. Shavua Tov, everybody. Thank you for coming. Great to see you all, and I wish you all a happy and healthy week.
Shavua Tov, thank you, and Yasher Koach.
Thank you.
Shavua tov.
Shavua tov.
Shavua Tov.